Chapter 9 of Gray Lensman by E. Smith. Chapter 9. The Port Admiral was eminently correct in supposing that Boskonia, whoever or whatever he or it might be, was already taking action upon what the Tellurian Lensman had done. For, even as Kinnison was at work in the Library of Science, a meeting which was indirectly to affect him no little was being called to order. In the immensely distant second galaxy was that meeting being held. Upon the then planet Jornavon of the Ike, within that sullen fortress already mentioned briefly. Presiding over it was the indescribable entity known to history as Ikelon, or more properly, Lon of the Ike. "Boskonia is now in session," that entity announced to the 8 other like monstrosities who, in some fashion indescribable to man, were stationed at the long, low, wide bench of stone-like material which served as a table of state. 9 days ago, each of us began to search for whatever new facts might bear upon the activities of the as yet entirely hypothetical Lensman who, Helmuth believed, was the real force back of our recent intolerable reverses in the Tellurian galaxy. As first of Boskonia, I will report as to the military situation. As you know, our positions there became untenable with the fall of our grand base, and all our mobile forces were withdrawn. In order to facilitate reorganization, coordinating ships were sent out. Some of these ships went to planets held in toto by us. Not one of these vessels has been able to report any pertinent facts whatever. Ships approaching bases of the Patrol or encountering patrol ships of war in space simply ceased communicating. Even their automatic recorders, tuned to my desk as Commander-in-Chief, ceased to function without transmitting any intelligible data, indicating complete destruction of those ships. A cascade system, in which one ship followed another at long range and with analytical instruments set to determine the nature of any beam or weapon employed, was attempted. The enemy, however, threw out blanketing zones of tremendous power, and we lost 6 more vessels without obtaining the desired data. These are the facts, all negative. Theorizing, deduction, summation, and integration will, as usual, come later. Eichmill, second of Boskonia, will now report. "My facts are also entirely negative," the second began. "As soon as our operations upon the planet Radalex began to be really productive of results, a contingent of Tellurian narcotic agents arrived, which may or may not have included the Lensmen." "Stick to facts for the time being," Eichland ordered curtly. Shortly thereafter, a minor agent, a female instructed to wear a thought screen at all times, lost her usefulness by suffering a mental disorder which incapacitated her quite seriously. Then another agent, also a female, this time one of the Third Order, who had been very useful up to that time, ceased reporting. A few days later, Bominger, the planetary director, failed to report, as did the planetary observer, who, as you know, was entirely unknown to and had no connection with the operating staff. Reports from other sources, such as importers and shippers, these, I believe, are here admissible as facts, indicate that our entire personnel upon Radalix has been put to death. No unusual developments have occurred upon any other planet, nor has any significant fact, however small, been discovered. Eichnoor, third of Boskonia. Also negative. Our every source of information from within the bases of the Patrol has been shut off. Every one of our representatives, some of whom have been reporting regularly for many years, has been silent, and every effort to reach any of them has failed. Ike Snap, fourth of Boskonia. Utterly negative. We have been able to find no trace whatever of the planet Medon, or of any one of the 21 warships investing it at the time of its disappearance. And so on, through 9 reports, while the tentacles of the mighty First of Boskone played intermittently over the keys of a complex instrument or machine before him. "We will now reason, theorize, and draw conclusions," the First announced, and each of the organisms fed his ideas and deductions into the machine. It whirred briefly, then ejected a tape, which Eichland took up and scanned narrowly. "Rejecting all conclusions having a probability of less than 95%, he announced. "We have, first, a set of 3 probabilities of a value of 99 and 99 100ths virtual certainties that one Tellurian lensman is the prime mover behind what has happened, that he has acquired a mental power heretofore unknown to his race, and that he has been in large part responsible for the development of the Patrol's new and formidable weapons. Second, a probability of 99% that he and his organization are no longer on the defensive, but have assumed the offensive. Third, one of 97% that it is not primarily Tellus which is an obstacle, even though the Galactic Patrol and civilization did originate upon that planet, but Arisia, that Helmuth's report was at least partially true. Fourth, one of 95 1/2% that the lens is also concerned in the disappearance of the planet Medon. There is a lesser probability, but still of some 94%, that that same lensman is involved here. I will interpolate here that the vanishment of that planet is a much more serious matter than it might appear on the surface to be. In situ, it was a thing of no concern. Gone, it becomes an affair of almost vital import. To issue orders impossible of fulfillment, as Helmuth did when he said, "Comb Trinco inch by inch," is easy. To comb this galaxy star by star for Medon would be an even more difficult and longer task, but what can be done is being done. To return to the conclusions, they point out a state of things which I do not have to tell you is really grave. This is the first major setback which the culture of Boskone has encountered since it began its rise thousands of years ago. You are familiar with that rise, how we of the Ike took over in turn a city, a race, a planet, a solar system, a region, a galaxy. How we extended our sway into the Tellurian galaxy as a preliminary to the extension of our authority throughout all the populated galaxies of the macrocosmic universe. You know our creed. To the victor, the power. He who is strongest and fittest shall survive and shall rule. This so-called civilization which is opposing us, which began upon Tellus, but whose driving force is that which dwells upon Arisia, is a soft, weak, puny-spirited thing indeed to resist the mental and material power of our culture. Myriads of beings upon each planet, each one striving for power, and so striving, giving of that power to him above. Myriads of planets, each in return for our benevolently despotic control, delegating and contributing power to the Ike. All this power, delegated to the thousands of millions of the Ike of this planet, culminates in and is wielded by the 9 of us who comprise Boskone. Power! Our forefathers thought that control of one planet was enough. Later it was declared that mastery of the galaxy, if realized, would sate ambition. We of Boskone, however, now know that our power shall be limited only by the bounds of the material cosmic all. Every world that exists throughout space shall and must pay homage and tribute to Boskone. What, gentlemen, is the sense of this meeting? Arisia must be visited. There was no need of integrating this thought. It was dominant and unanimous. I would advise caution, however. The 8th of Boskone amended his ballot. We are an old race, it is true, and able. We have demonstrated our superiority over every other race of our galaxy much more conclusively than the Tellurians have shown their supremacy on theirs. I cannot help but believe, however, that in Arisia there exists an unknown quality, an X, which we as yet are unable to evaluate. It must be borne in mind that Helmuth, while not of the Ike, was nevertheless an able being. Yet he was handled so mercilessly there that he could not render a complete or conclusive report of his expedition then or ever. With these thoughts in mind, I suggest that no actual landing be made, but that the torpedo be launched from a distance. The suggestion is eminently sound, the first approved. As to Helmuth, he was, for an oxygen breather, fairly able. He was, however, mentally soft, as are all such. Do you, our foremost psychologist, believe that any existent or conceivable mind could break yours, with no application whatever of physical force or device, as Helmuth's reports seem to indicate that his was broken? I use the word seemed advisedly, for I do not believe that Helmuth reported the actual truth. In fact, I was about to replace him with an Ike, however unpleasant such an assignment would be to any of our race because of that weakness. No, agreed the 8th. I do not believe that there exists in the universe a mind of sufficient power to break mine. It is a truism that no mental influence, however powerful, can affect a strong, definitely and positively opposed will. For that reason I voted against the use of thought screens by our agents. Such screens expose them to detection and can be of no real benefit. Physical means must have been, used first, and after physical subjugation, the screens were of course useless. I am not sure that I agree with you entirely, the 9th put in. We have here cogent evidence that there have been employed mental forces of a type or pattern with which we are entirely unfamiliar. While it is the consensus of opinion that the importance of Helmuth's report should be minimized, it seems to me that we have enough corroborative evidence to indicate that this mentality may be able to operate without material aid. If so, rigid screening should be retained as offering the only possible safeguard from such force. Sound in theory, but in practice dubious, the psychologist countered. If there were any evidence whatever that the screens had done any good, I would agree with you. But have they? Screening failed to save Helmuth or his base, and there is nothing to indicate that the screens impeded, even momentarily, the progress of this superstitious lensman upon Radalix. You speak of rigid screening. The term is meaningless. Perfectly effective screening is impossible. If, as we seem to be doing, we postulate the ability of one mind to control another without physical bodily contact, or is the idea at all far-fetched, considering what I myself have done to the minds of many of our agents? The lensman can work through any unshielded mentality whatever to attain his ends. As you know, Helmuth deduced too late that it must have been through the mind of a dog that the lensman invaded Grand Base. Poppycock, snorted the 7th. Or if not, we can kill the dogs or screen their minds too, he sneered. Admitted, the psychologist returned, unmoved. You might conceivably kill all the animals that run and all the birds that fly. You cannot, however, destroy all life in any locality at all extended, clear down to the worms in their burrows and the termites in their hidden retreats. And the mind has not yet existed which is keen enough to draw a line of demarcation and say, here begins intelligent life. "This discussion is interesting but futile," put in Eichland, forestalling a scornful reply. "It is more to the point, I think, to discuss that which must be done, or rather, who is to do it, since the thing itself admits of only one solution: an atomic bomb of sufficient power to destroy every trace of life upon that accursed planet. Shall we send someone, or shall some of us ourselves go? To overestimate a foe is at worst only an unnecessary precaution. To underestimate this one may well be fatal. Therefore, it seems to me that the decision in this matter should lie with our psychologist. I will, however, if you prefer, integrate our various conclusions." Recourse to the machine was unnecessary. It was agreed by all that Ike-Amp, the eighth of Boskone, should decide. "My decision will be evident," that worthy said measuredly, "when I say that I myself, for one, am going. The situation is admittedly a serious one. Moreover, I believe, to a greater extent than do the rest of you, that there is a certain amount of truth in Helmut's version of his experiences. My mind is the only one in existence of whose power I am absolutely certain, the only one which I definitely know will not give way before any conceivable mental force, whatever its amount or whatever its method of application. I want none with me save of the Ike, and even those I will examine carefully before permitting them aboard ship with me." "You decide as I thought," said the first. "I also shall go. My mind will hold, I think." "It will hold. In your case, examination is unnecessary," agreed the psychologist. And I," arose what amounted to a chorus. "No," came curt denial from the first. "Two are enough to operate all machinery and weapons. To take any more of the Boskone would weaken us here injudiciously. Well, you know how many are working and in what fashions for seats at this table. To take any weaker mind, even of the Ike, might conceivably be to court disaster. We two should be safe. I, because I have proven repeatedly my right to hold the title of first of this council, the rulers and masters of the dominant race of the universe. Ike-Amp, because of his unparalleled knowledge of all intelligence. Our vessel is ready. We go." As has been indicated, none of the Ike were, or even had been, cowards. Tyrants they were, it is true, and dictators of the harshest, sternest, and most soulless kind. Callous and merciless they were, cold as rocks of their frigid world, and as utterly ruthless and remorseless as the fabled Juggernaut. But they were as logical as they were hard. He who of them all was best fitted to do anything did it unquestioningly, and, as a matter of course, did it with the calmest emotionless efficiency of the machine, which in actual fact he was. Therefore, it was the first and the eighth of Boskone who went. Through the star-studded purlieus of the second galaxy the black, airless, lightless vessel sped. Through the reaches, vaster and more tenuous far, of intergalactic space, into the Tellurian galaxy, up to a solar system shunned then as now by all uninvited intelligences, dread and dreaded Arisia. Not close to the planet did even the two of Boskone venture, but stopped at the greatest distance at which a torpedo could be directed surely against the target. But even so, the vessel of the Ike had punctured a screen of mental force, and as Eichland extended a tentacle toward the firing mechanism of the missiles, watched in as much suspense as they were capable of feeling by the planet-bound seven of Boskone, a thought as penetrant as a needle and yet as binding as a cable of tempered steel drove into his brain. "Hold," that thought commanded, and Eichland held, as did also his fellow Boskonian. Both remained rigid, unable to move any single voluntary muscle, while the other 7 of the council looked on in uncomprehending amazement. Their instruments remained dead, since those mechanisms were not sensitive to thought. To them nothing at all was occurring. Those 7 leaders of the Ike knew that something was happening, something dreadful, something untoward, something very decidedly not upon the program they had helped to plan. They, however, could do nothing about it. They could only watch and wait. "Ah, 'tis Lon and Amp of the Ike," the thought resounded within the minds of the helpless twain. "Truly the elders are correct. My mind is not yet competent, for although I have had many facts instead of but a single one upon which to cogitate, and no dearth of time in which to do it, I now perceive that I have erred grievously in my visualization of the cosmic all. You do, however, fit nicely into the now enlarged scheme, and I am really grateful to you for furnishing new material with which for many cycles of time to come I shall continue to build. Indeed, I believe that I shall permit you to return unharmed to your own planet. You know the warning we gave Helmuth, your minion. Hence, your lives are forfeit for violating knowingly the privacy of Arisia. But wanton and unnecessary destruction is not conducive to mental growth. You are therefore at liberty to depart. I repeat to you the instructions given your underling. Do not return, either in person or by any form whatever of proxy." The Arisian had as yet exerted scarcely a fraction of his power. Although the bodies of the 2 invaders were practically paralyzed, their minds had not been punished. Therefore the psychologist said coldly, "You are not now dealing with Helmuth, nor with any other weak, mindless oxygen breather, but with the Ike." And by sheer effort of will, he moved toward the controls. What boots it? The Arisian compressed upon the 8th's brain a searing force which sent shrieking waves of pain throughout all nearby space. Then, taking over the psychologist's mind, he forced him to move to the communicator panel, upon whose plate could be seen the other 7 of Boskone gazing in wonder. "Set up planetary coverage," he directed through Ike Amp's organs of speech, "so that each individual member of the entire race of the Ike can understand what I am about to transmit." There was a brief pause, then the deep, measured voice rolled on. "I am Euconidor of Arisia, speaking to you through this mass of undead flesh, which was once your chief psychologist, Ike Amp the 8th, of that high council which you call Boskone. I had intended to spare the lives of these 2 simple creatures, but I perceive that such action would be useless. Their minds, and the minds of all you who listen to me, are warped, perverted, incapable of reason. They and you would have misinterpreted the gesture completely, would have believed that I did not slay them only because I could not do so. Some of you would have offended again and again until you were so slain. You can be convinced of such a fact only by the unmistakable demonstration of superior force. Force is the only thing you are able to understand. Your one aim in life is to gain material power. Greed, corruption, and crime are your chosen implements. You consider yourself hard and merciless. In a sense, and according to your abilities, you are, although your minds are too callow to realize that there are depths of cruelty and of depravity which you cannot even faintly envision. You love and worship power. Why? To any thinking mind it should be clear that such a lust intrinsically is, and forever must by its very nature be futile. For even if any one of you could command the entire material universe, what good would it do him? None. What would he have? Nothing. Not even the satisfaction of accomplishment, for that lust is in fact insatiable. It would then turn upon itself and feed upon itself. I tell you as a fact that there is only one power which is at one and the same time illimitable and yet finite, insatiable yet satisfying, one which, while eternal, yet invariably returns to its possessor the true satisfaction of real accomplishment in exact ratio to the effort expended upon it. That power is the power of the mind. You, being so backward and so wrong of development, cannot understand how this can be. But if any one of you will concentrate upon one single fact, or a small object, such as a pebble or the seed of a plant or other creature, for as short a period of time as 100 of your years, you will begin to perceive its truth. You boast that your planet is old. What of that? We of Arisia dwelt in turn upon 1,000 planets, from planetary youth to cosmic old age, before we became independent of the chance formation of such celestial bodies. You prate that you are an ancient race. Compared to us, you are sheerly infantile. We of Arisia did not originate upon a planet formed during the recent interpassage of these two galaxies, but upon one which came into being in an antiquity so distant that the figure in years would be entirely meaningless to your minds. We were of an age to your mentalities starkly incomprehensible when your most remote ancestors began to wriggle about in the slime of your parent world. Do the men of the Patrol know? I perceive the question in your minds. They do not. None save a few of the most powerful of their minds has the slightest inkling of the truth. To reveal any portion of it to civilization as a whole would blight that civilization irreparably. Though seekers after truth in the best sense, they are essentially juvenile, and their lifespans are ephemeral indeed. The mere realization that there is in existence such a race as ours would place upon them such an inferiority complex as would make further advancement impossible. In your case, such a course of events is not to be expected. You will close your minds to all that has happened, declaring to yourself that it was impossible, and that, therefore, it could not have taken place, and did not. Nevertheless, you will stay away from Arisia henceforth. But to resume, you consider yourselves long-lived? Know then, insects, that your life-span of 1,000 of your years is but a moment. I myself have already lived 11,000 such lifetimes, and I am but a youth, a mere guardian, not yet to be entrusted with really serious thinking. I have spoken overlong, the reason for my prolixity being that I do not like to see the energy of a race so misused, so corrupted to material conquest for its own sake. I would like to set your minds upon the way of truth, if perchance such a thing should be possible. I have pointed out that way. Whether or not you follow it is for you to decide. Indeed, I fear that most of you, in your short-sighted pride, have already cast my message aside, refusing point-blank to change your habits of thought. It is, however, in the hope that some few of you will perceive the way, and will follow it by abandoning your planet and its Ike before it is too late, that I have discoursed at such length. Whether or not you change your habits of thought, I advise you to heed this, my warning. Arisia does not want and will not tolerate intrusion. As a lesson, watch these two violators of our privacy destroy themselves." The giant voice ceased. Ikland's tentacles moved toward the controls. The vast torpedo launched itself. But instead of hurling toward distant Arisia, it swept around in a mighty circle and struck in direct central impact the great cruiser of the Ike. There was an appalling crash, a space-racking detonation, a flare of incandescence incredible and indescribable as the energy, calculated to disrupt, almost to volatilize a world, expended itself upon the insignificant mass of one Boskonian battleship and upon the unresisting texture of the void. End of chapter 9.